Hello, everyone. Welcome to Kraken One Open. Thank you for joining us. If you've never seen us before, we are the podcast that brings the best of both worlds of hockey drinking together with the Seattle Kraken flair. With me, as always, is my resident hockey expert, Jameson Edwards. Jameson, how you doing tonight?
I'm feeling great, man. It's another week. We got some of the preseason. Well, for the Kraken, all the preseason out of the way. Actually, it's gonna be a long weekend waiting for Tuesday and the start of the season down in Vegas. But got a lot to talk about with the second half of the preseason under our belts already.
Yep. And he's out there in Chicago. I'm right here in Seattle. And I, Nick Cody, your host, and you can follow me at JustFollow61. I will be going to my first training camp through our depth program membership this Friday. So at the top of the show, make sure you're following us on Twitter, Kraken One Open, and you're subscribed on YouTube. And let me know anything that you want to make sure I observe at training camp or check out in the store there. This is going to be my first time checking out the Iceplex. And thank you to those that have been with us all along. We appreciate you. But as you know, we're getting into our face-off. That's how we start off every episode. And I'd love to talk about what I'm drinking tonight because if you listen to our last episode, I said I was done with beer. And well, I made it a couple days, folks, but we found a new one. I'm in trouble. I have a new Seattle beer that I've found. I've had it actually a couple times. The Sky Kraken from Fremont. I don't think I liked it the first time I had it, but I had one the other day after taking a little bit of time off beer, and gotta say I'm a big fan. So had to get a few of them and save a bunch of them for this episode in particular because preseason's over. We got to celebrate. What are you going to be drinking tonight, Jameson?
Tried and true, brother. Whiskey diet.
Oh God! Well, at least let the fans out there know what brand of whiskey is it. I know that's the thing people are asking.
I mean, am I allowed to say something other than Jack Daniels with the old sponsorship with the Kraken?
We aren't yet officially sponsored in this ninth episode, but hey, someday they may have to retroactively just dub your voice over this. So you can tell us and we can fix it.
Yeah.
That's what post is for.
I personally prefer Evan Williams. It's cheap. It's not as sweet as Jack Daniels. To me, Jack is a little bit on the
if I'm not wrong,
side.
It's a Canadian whiskey, right?
Kentucky, I believe.
Oh, I forgot.
Yep.
I've never
Kentucky
I honestly don't think I've ever had it, but I'll have to try it next time. But that's the end of our face-off, and well, let's actually get one cracking open.
Release
Cheers,
the Kraken!
Cheers. Anyways, we get to drink a lot more. We'll make up for that, particularly right now in the penalty box. And our penalty box is a little different. We don't have a set time limit here. I'm going to start making Jameson drink for every time he's already sneezed during this recording. So, but
allergies, man.
For me, myself, I am definitely going to drink for not being prepared to get Jameson a decent stream of this, at least two of our last three preseason games, because it was a miserable time. We both tried to sync up and watch all three of these last preseason games together, but turns out it actually was very difficult to get if you weren't in our region or I guess had the right broadcast going on. So that was a very difficult thing for both of us. So I wasn't completely tuned into the games as much as I wanted to be, but man, that last one, we were both able to tune in at the same time, pick up everything at the same time, and got everything just about synced up. And what a time it was. And saw a lot to be happy about. But what I'm definitely drinking for is the distractions early on in those first two games that and I should have thought ahead. I should have thought, man, I should have taken care of my man Jameson, had my computer set up right here, streaming it to share, because it would have been a very easy thing to do to coincide with the podcast. But alas, didn't think ahead, but paying for it now. What do you got, Jameson?
I mean, I know there was at least one instance last week where I said Edmonton instead of Calgary and then just kind of kept going without realizing it. And going back and listening to it, I'm just kicking myself because, well, that's kind of my job is to know the teams. So I was beating myself up a little bit about that. I mean, so that was the big one. I mean, it as you mentioned with the streams, I don't think that was your fault at all. I mean, by all means drink for it. But it was really frustrating because they had like the official stream on NHL.com, but then it was just some animated Oilers logo, which was really frustrating. And I mean, there are a few different streaming sites out there that we don't like to name publicly, but they didn't have either of those games either. So that was really frustrating for me personally. So yeah, I was just sitting here staring at the box score like a jackass. But yeah, it turned out all right. Still preseason. They're probably just getting their bearings set.
Well, fair enough, man. You'll drink for it anyways. And I'll drink for the sin which I'm about to commit, which is this pun. And it seems like they were really cracking down on the streaming of those preseason games, huh?
Back it up. We're going home.
No, mate, we're just getting started. We have our first period. A great penalty box segment, I think. But
release the Kraken!
On to the first period, which we call our deep dive. We go down deep to try and find what is significant about our last Kraken games. Now that we're going to be ramping into the season, we're going to have a lot of games to talk about, a lot of things to focus on. But this episode, we're really going to deep dive on 3 preseason games we just saw to close out our last 3 preseason games. And to start it off, man, I know you didn't get to see it, but you got to see some of the highlights, some of the stats. You're going to get to drink for like the 17th sneeze there. But, allergies are not, mate. The whiskey will only help.
Yeah.
But we talked in our last episode that we would learn a lot from that rematch against Edmonton. And that was up north of me in Everett. I didn't get to go see it, but was sitting right here at home. Apparently, the lines were out the door at Angel of the Winds Arena already, like pretty early, like 5 o'clock for a 7 p.m. game, which, preseason, pretty amazing. And I'm bummed I didn't go, but again, also wasn't trying to pay $200. I'll save that, possibly get a real jersey one of these days. So I at least took away from, excuse me. Whoa, we're getting the burps on early. I'm going to have to, you'll have to start taking a tally for that, my friend. But I was really impressed with just the perseverance of the team because it seemed like we really wanted to bring it. We really wanted to get that game and show them that the first time that they stomped us in their place, it wasn't the best version of our team. And man, they came out there, gave it their all, but Skinner in the goal made it really, really tough the entire night. It took them till late and in overtime to get the win. And I think you had the stats. I think he was 39 of 41 there.
39 out of 41 shot saves. And I mean, you can't ask any more of a goaltender. I mean, when your team's letting 41 shots get through, for him standing on his head and stopping 39 of them, like, get real.
Yeah. And I know if I'm remembering that stat, it's a big deal because I don't like context wise. For those of you that are new, I am a football guy. I'm a basic sports guy. I'm just getting into hockey for the first time. And I'm learning just like a lot of our new Seattle fans are. And that for me, I just saw him and watched it like the entire game. Just, this guy is frustrating the hell out of me. Thankfully, our goalies really stepped it up. And, besides the slip up against Calgary, it seemed like our goalies really stepped up their game from the first 3 preseason games we saw. So I thought that factored in a lot. And that at the end of Edmonton game, I was just so proud of these boys for going out there and really just taking it to them in a new arena. It's still not their actual home. It's, you got to give them credit because Everett still is not Seattle. It's still going to be about about that time of day, it's going to take about an hour to get there from Climate Pledge Arena at the very least. So definitely out of the range of where they're actually going to be playing. But man, came out with the win and got to be happy about it. Ooh, man.
Yeah, totally. I'm just coughing up a lung right now. I'm so sorry.
It's all good.
But yeah, I mean, just to keep with a little bit of the statistics and how especially Grubauer was the biggest one to me, because that was one I know specifically last week we were talking about how he was not really in the form that you would expect a guy that finished second overall in goals save percentage last season.
Mhm.
But I mean, last night, he stepped up uh, drastically.
Yeah.
38 saves for him, 38 out of 38. So I mean, usually you expect between maybe like 25, maybe 30 shots. If you're getting 30 shots, that's a shooting gallery.
Yeah.
So to see so many shots going in both directions, depending on the game,
Yeah.
is I mean, it'll be interesting to see once the roster gets down to the full 23 guys. I know when I was at the Hawks game, I made the joke how there's been more shots in this game than there have been minutes, which is absurd. There was something like a total like 85 shots, not including overtime.
Yeah,
which is you don't see that very often. So I don't know if it's a byproduct of simply it being preseason hockey or if the Kraken just are gonna end up as one of those teams that take a lot of shots, which isn't ever a bad thing. I mean, you can't score if you don't shoot the puck. So that's a big one. Pretty interesting stats otherwise. I mean, we do have Nathan Bastian, the only guy lacing up for every preseason game.
Yep.
Which we talked about a little bit last week.
Our first Seattle Kraken preseason Iron Man right there.
Yep. And I mean, with McCann and Schwartz with 5 points in 4 games, Morgan Geekie 4 points in 5 games, but he's a -5, which is very strange.
So for fans like me that hear that, and I'm like, I think I know what that means. Plus, I've listened to a lot of basketball stats. Listen to me. Explain to us out there what it means in hockey to your plus minus.
The basic, easy way to describe it is if you're on the ice when the other team scores, you get a minus, and vice versa, you get a plus if you're on the ice. So the bizarre thing is that he has 4 points in 5 games, but he's been on the ice for 9 points in the opposite direction.
Damn.
Not including when he was on the ice, but didn't get an assist or a goal.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, it's kind of one of these crappy metrics that doesn't really effectively mean anything, but it is a stat nonetheless.
And it definitely does put a little bit of perspective where we were coming out of that very first match going, man, Geekie looks pretty good.
Right. And I mean, the positive to take away from that, going down a little bit in the opposite direction, Jordan Eberle and Jaden Schwartz both +5. So that's again not the greatest metric by which to value a player, but typically if you're on the ice when your team's doing well, you want to be that guy.
Yeah.
But then time on the ice, that's another interesting metric going into Giordano and Adam Larson.
Yeah.
So usually it's going to be like your top defenseman, or even say a good example would be someone like Alex Ovechkin, who's going to be on every power play that the Capitals have.
Yeah.
So he's going to get that naturally inflated time on the ice just because they are just going to stick him out there for 2 minutes every time just to, like bomb clappers from The Office.
Yeah.
But I mean, 21-11 for Giordano, 20-50 for Adam Larson. Anything over 20 is just sickening.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like that much, like, oh, you only have to play hockey for 20 minutes. But a little bit going back to last week, how you were talking about how fast the changes are, usually 30 to 45 seconds. That's a lot of shifts. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a kind of a just quick breakdown of the stats that stood out to me coming out of the past 3 games and I guess the preseason as a collective.
Yeah, and a couple guys there at like that 19-minute mark too are Hayden Fleury and Vince Dunn too. So yeah, that's something to definitely keep in mind, and it's important because it felt like especially when we were there in other arenas or you're trying to change lineups, definitely felt like we were trying to toy around with a lot more top level guys and mixing those matchups first is a priority to trying to discover young talent.
Right. And I mean, there's a big name there too. Vince Dunn almost put up 3 against Vancouver. I mean, when that second one went in, I was like, wait, was that Dunn again? Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's always good news when you're on the ice for goals for. So I was impressed with him personally.
Yeah. Well, before we get too much into that Vancouver game, like if you read into the Calgary game, I'm interested to know what you think personally. But I know I had a frustrating day already. I was bringing some bad energy, and we at the podcast here aren't superstitious at all. But the Ducks had a pretty ugly, and the Oregon Ducks, not the Anaheim Ducks. I forget I need to clarify that as a former Oregon Duck myself. They had a pretty ugly loss to Stanford, and just getting back in time to catch what I could of the game was frustrating because I was at a friend's house who also could not get the game to stream right at 7:00 and wasn't entirely sure how to get it. So I just ended up taking the fastest Uber I could get to get home, and which ended up at 7:00 on a Saturday, costing me over $50, which sucked. So I was already mad. And then I get here and I'm watching the game and I'm just like, man, was not worth the $50 to watch us give up to Calgary, basically, after it felt like we went there and came out on fire. So I don't know what you saw in it. Personally, I was already so discouraged that the loss didn't get me down too much, at least, because I was already like, I don't care about sports ball anymore, but sports puck was still at least something I had to catch for the end of the evening. And I know you didn't get to see it, but you saw some of the highlights and the stats.
Yeah, I mean, keeping with the just general theme of being disappointed, not being able to watch was a kind of swift kick to the balls.
Yeah.
But I mean, it from the very little I saw, it felt like they got their redemption versus Edmonton and then just said, well, we already beat Calgary. Who gives a fuck? So that's kind of how it felt. But I also didn't look too deeply into the difference between the rosters from the first game against Calgary versus the second one. So I don't know, maybe they figured, well, it worked the way we had it the first time. Maybe they juggled some lines up. Again, I wasn't able to watch the game, unfortunately, so I don't have as much insight as I would like in that particular regard.
Yeah.
But I mean, coming out of the preseason winning record, can't complain,
Yeah.
with so much kind of to figure out.
And to be honest, the 4-0 win, 2 nights ago in Vancouver, definitely getting to watch that with you, brother, made up for those 2 frustrating nights for sure. Because it was just like, I got so much more insight to the game. I felt way more aware. I lose the puck so much, as you already have learned. In mid play, I'll start catching things that just are completely astray. But oh man, what a physical game that was, first and foremost, even with a 4-0 win. I mean, there were times you were sitting there telling me, like, what, the referees are really letting it go a little bit here. They might have to, and a lot of penalties. But what are some things you caught from that?
Yeah. Just I'm trying to remember the question you were asking at the time. Talking about cross-checking.
Yes.
Some of
we got to get back to that from last week.
Sort of what the sort of stipulations behind what warrants a penalty or why a referee wouldn't call it in a certain situation. Mm-hmm. And it kind of does depend what referee you get. There was I forget the name of the referee they got rid of last year because he was just an absolute steamy pile of crap. But he was basically just letting everything go, just whistle in his pocket. But with the cross-checking, I guess they're just really crunching down on how much it interferes with the play. Typically, in the past, it was just anytime you have both hands on your stick and you get them with the shaft in between your two hands, and it is an obstruction of whatever movement. And it just based on what I was reading, as far as the again crunching down on that, it looks like they're gonna take that a little bit more seriously. There was one penalty yesterday where they weren't sure if it was going to be a 5-minute major, and I know you were asking why did he get 4 minutes for that, and it was because the stick came up and he spit blood out. So
Yeah.
like if it's a high sticking or a cross checking or anything that can hit you in the face, basically, the ref will go straight over it and see if you're bleeding, and then if you're bleeding, it's automatically another 2 minutes in box for a double minor.
I like that. Ooh, bless you, man.
Ooh, thank you.
You'll have to. I will add that to your drink tally along with the 2 hands on the shaft comment. I'm just gonna put that right down on the tally for now. And hey, I think there's only one more thing we got to wrap up with the preseason, and that's we still are not, as we record this, down to a 23-man roster. Going to take some more time on that, but Wednesday, forwards Cole Lind and Max McCormick were placed on league waivers. So as you know, it's very tough when you get down to late preseason and preseason games, and opportunities to show what you can do on the ice are done. Now it's all about grinding through these last few days of training camp, and I'm excited to get to see one of them for sure, because this is getting consecutive days of practice is just going to get these guys tighter and better, and they're going to have to be going on the road to start at Vegas.
Yeah. One other guy that's I don't know if he's gotten picked up or not, but local hometown favorite Connor Carrick. He got put on waivers, and I mean, naturally I gotta like him, having skated with him in the past at our home rink out there in Orland back in the day, and then he played in Washington, so he's another one of these guys, kind of like Marcus Johansson, who's also not having the greatest season of his career, unfortunately. Still hoping that he finds a place within the roster that benefits his abilities a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I mean, getting down to that 23-man roster is kind of the heartbreaking part of preseason, because you, like, especially if you're watching every game, you grow to just like a guy for whatever reason.
Or you see him breaking up the Fleury brothers, man. That's it's not as heartbreaking as what Vegas did to their Marc-Andre Fleury, but it's up there, at least for what Seattle fans have to compare to.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few guys out in Washington that when I saw that they got put on waivers, I just kind of like, come on, man.
Hey, and then save it. That's a great way to end our first period, though, man. We could drink to that.
Release the Kraken!
But as our fans know, the second period is where we go around the NHL. So you get all the opportunity you want, Jameson, to talk about your team, the Caps, or your local team, the Blackhawks, or you know what? We go around with whatever the biggest topic is. And man, we've got a couple really interesting ones that came up even off the ice this week. What do you want to go with first? The most controversial, or the most exciting, or the most impactful?
It's probably easiest just to finish that thought and get the capital stuff out of the way.
Good idea.
Just because we're already kind of there. A few guys, Axel Johnson and Fjallby, who was a promising prospect, just got picked up by Buffalo. He was on waivers for less than 24 hours, and Buffalo was just, we'll take that guy. And I mean, Buffalo's looking a lot better now that Eichel's not doing anything really. But one of the big ones was Robin Lehner, the goaltender from Vegas, was criticizing. He had I believe it was an ankle injury back in 2015. And the reason I make that quick transition is because of how Buffalo is treating Jack Eichel's shoulder injury. So Lehner came out and criticized, believe it was Alain Vigneault, who's the coach, or was the coach at the time. And it's just kind of one of these weird drama things where now Lehner's talking about not only the mismanagement of his ankle recovery process, but also the impacts of like mental conditioning and how the league doesn't take that into account when the player has an injury. And because I mean, if you get hurt and your career is over, not to get too depressing, but a lot of these guys don't really have transferable skills.
Yeah,
you spend your entire life playing hockey.
Yep.
Then you get hurt, you can't play anymore. What in the world are you supposed to do?
Yep.
So that was a big thing that Robin Lehner was talking about. Talking about Washington yesterday. Well, I guess 2 days ago from when this will air, will be the 16-year anniversary of Alex Ovechkin's first game in the NHL. October 5th, 2005, scored 2 goals against the Columbus Blue Jackets. So that was an interesting little statistic or
I still actually do, like, I don't remember. I couldn't remember, but I knew I was a sophomore in high school at the time. And it's just like, damn. Yeah, Ovi's still hanging around there, and damn. Just you remember the hype even back then was real, but to live up to it, something else.
Yeah, well, that was also the same year because there was a lockout in 2004 when he got drafted, so he wasn't able to play. And just a bit of history, that following year when he was able to play for Washington, that was also when Sidney Crosby got drafted. So the big rivalry was the standard North America versus Russia, because Crosby's Canadian, but it was Mario Lemieux coming out of retirement. It was actually just Mario Lemieux's birthday. But Lemieux deciding he was going to play another season so he could have this phenom Sidney Crosby in Pittsburgh. I mean, Lemieux being the Hall of Famer that he is, however many years of being an all-star, but he also bought the Penguins. I forget what year that was, but they weren't selling enough tickets, or they couldn't afford to have a team, and they were going to move, and the arena was going to get demolished or something like that. And so he not only saved the organization as a player, but also as an owner. So, but yeah, seeing Crosby and Ovechkin develop over all these years, it's bizarre to think it's been 16 years. And I mean, Ovechkin's in the first year of his 5-year contract that he just signed. So that's a long career.
And making us feel real old now, man. Jesus.
Yeah. And I think it's the only player left is Zdeno Chara from the 1996 draft.
Jeez.
I mean, he just signed up in New York, and I remember just watching him as a kid and going into the idea of him just being around for that long. It's just like, holy jumping. Like, it's just bizarre. I mean, this year's probably going to be his last year, but he got drafted by the Islanders and went back there. So kind of coming full circle. But yeah, just a couple little points of trivia in there. The aggravating news for the league, you and I talked about Josh Archibald up in Edmonton.
And I want to point out, I sent that to you. Normally the hockey information is a one-way street on this deal here, but this time, Jameson, you had to sit back and go, wait, who's that? And I had to go explain, I mean, this Archibald guy. I didn't know what I don't know.
And I mean, I'm gonna censor what I said verbatim, but I just said, "Oh, forget that Bender. Who cares?
We don't have any.
Not the end of the world.
We don't have any censors here, man. You can go ahead, let it rip. All you gotta do is pay the toll."
True. I did just say, oh, fuck that stupid vendor. Who cares?
Amen. I'll drink to that.
Cheers to that. Cheers to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing that really bothers me right now with professional athletes that are out there, if you have concerns about the vaccine, I certainly would love to hear warranted scientific data and studies and your real articulated concerns, because like this and the Andrew Wiggins of the world really bother me, because it feels like they're not asking the right questions. They're asking the questions that work best for them to just be divisive about it. And it's like, come along, like, you're a professional athlete right now. You're getting an opportunity to make hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars, depending on your sport. And honestly, it's a fantastic living for you to be able to play a game that you need to love to be able to do it at that level, for sure. You sacrifice your body, but man, to do it over such an awful hill to die on, and then to get sick potentially, it's just all not worth it in terms of that. And you are a professional athlete. If you have any symptoms from the vaccine, you are going to have medical resources above and beyond the average person. So personally, at least that, I hate to go on a side rant there, but at least that really triggered me, because I was sitting there thinking, man, you really want to sacrifice your career over something like that, when we all grew up as kids having to get, immunizations so that we could all go to school and do the normal things that people did. It's just how it was.
Yeah, and I mean, realistically, at the end of the day, it's totally at the discretion of the owners of the teams.
Yep.
And their collective, I don't
collective bargaining agreement with the
because that is
players,
a totally separate contractual.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, the frustrating thing, speaking of losing your career because of that, I just saw it today. I don't know if it broke today or if I'm late to the party, but Matt Tkachuk up in Detroit said, I would rather lose my career than get this vaccine, which to me is just so brain dead. Not only because just get it, first of all, but two, his brother Brady up in Ottawa hasn't even signed a contract, so he's just being a little bitch. But they come from a long lineage. Yep, I got a drink to that.
Come from a long lineage.
Long lineage. I mean, Keith Tkachuk is a legend. He's one of the highest scoring American-born players of all time. So now you're just looking like a jackass because you're throwing a little fit. And I mean, I'm not going to try to ventriloquize as far as what Keith Tkachuk's opinion of the vaccine would be. But if I break my back for 20 plus years, not only playing the game, but also raising kids and seeing them be successful, just for the kid to turn around and say, I don't care about hockey that much, I'm not doing it. That to me is a slap in the face.
Yeah.
It's just ignorant.
Yeah.
And I mean, it would be one thing if they had some general legitimate, say like a study or like a health defect that would necessarily be complicated, but they don't. They just don't. I'm not doing it. Yeah, like grow up.
And I have a lot of personal experience with this, not only as a former collegiate athlete, as someone that's sat there and I've let doctors that are a lot smarter than me decide on injuries I didn't know about. I just knew something was not working right. And there's multiple times as an athlete where you do that, but to not put your faith in the scientists out there and the people that are working here under the Hippocratic oath to save people, it just blows my mind sometimes. And even further than that, if anyone has hesitancy towards the vaccine, it should be me. I have a brother that has Guillain-Barré syndrome, which possibly could be from having a vaccine. That is one of the possible triggers, is a bad reaction to a vaccine, or many, many different things. And, seeing what he's gone through just to be able to walk again, man, it's scary. But I also know that I am a young, healthy male. And at least like the vaccine, for the most part, statistically, the side effects have been even like more rare than aspirin. Like, you see bigger like problems with like over the counter drugs than, I know, so I've heard some things with the Johnson and Johnson, but I have heard very, very little about the 2 doses of the Moderna or Pfizer. And to not get, again, I'm getting way too in the depths here, but that's what we do around the NHL. We beat around, we go around with different topics there in the middle when we got to switch sides there and have that longer lineup change, and we make up for it. But man, again, it's frustrating. I hope everyone out there is able to get a vaccine if it's available to you, and just recommend you do, because again, even if you aren't a professional athlete, man, it's worth it to the people around you to know that you're going to be safe, and if they possibly transmit COVID to you, that, like, you're going to be able to have the antibodies to fight it and survive, because right now there's just way too many people that are going and taking up hospital beds right now.
Yeah. And I mean, just to stick with the COVID idea, but we haven't mentioned that with the vaccinations going to Miami, that's going to be on the 24th. So we'll be doing our first live episode, which we would love to have everybody joining, excuse me, playing along, engaging in the chat. It is the first day after who are they playing? Is that Vancouver again?
We will open Climate Pledge Arena on October 23rd, the night before our first live episode, and we hope you do all join us live on YouTube.
Yeah, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to your experience at the training facility,
yeah,
or training camp, I should say.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's I mean, speaking of first times for us, we will be having our first ever guest joining us.
Yeah,
for our third period. And
well, let's just say that was a great second period, and I'll finish my beer to that.
Absolutely. Cheers, mate.
Release the Kraken!
So we're going to do something different this week for our third period. We haven't got a lot of fan engagement on Twitter, at least not significant enough for us to give a whole period to it. So we're going to bring in our first guest this week. Jameson, go ahead and give him an introduction.
Yeah, so this is my friend Andy. We first started playing in 2006, I believe, 2005, perhaps, somewhere in there. Played double and triple A growing up. We're on the same beer league team now. I specifically say the same beer league team because saying that we play hockey together now is a bit of an exaggeration. But yeah, so we go way back. If you listen to last week, Andy's the gentleman that's invited me to go to the Blackhawks game with him. So thank you again for that, Andy.
No problem.
But yeah.
On that subject, let's start with our first question for Andy, which is already warned you about Geeky, and I'm just going to explain plus minuses here. First and foremost, what were you really trying to tell Jameson there as a warning? And explain a little more to me, why is plus minus not the greatest stat to really explain anything, but also why is it significant to your opinion on Geeky?
Well, I don't think the plus minus is a significant stat, mostly because it's when you're on the ice for a goal, it's a plus. When you're not on the ice, or when you're on the ice for a goal against, it's a minus. But that doesn't indicate your play in the cause of that goal. Could be goalie didn't make the save he should have made. Could be defensive turnover. Really doesn't indicate your level of interaction that had to do with it. Same with, you could have just jumped onto the ice as it's 2-on-1 the other way and they score. You had nothing to do with that goal. However, in Geeky's case, Jameson was mentioning he was a -5. He's -5 with 5 points. So that means
4 points.
4 points. So that means he's on the ice 5 more times than he's produced points. That's a lot of goals against. And you said he's playing on a line with Donato. I don't know if that's like a huge compliment either in itself. That's a kid who's never broken out. He was supposed to be a big thing in Boston. They let him go. Goes to Minnesota. Or San Jose. Nothing there. Nothing in Minnesota. So Geeky and Donato doesn't scream success to me.
I mean, okay, so just to back up and revisit a little bit of the conversation from last week and go into how this entire conversation really sort of took its footing or got its footing between Andy and I was telling him how, for me personally, watching that first line in the very first period of Seattle Kraken hockey history, seeing Geeky, Donato, and Donskoy, I just said, that's the line to watch. If there's one line to watch tonight, it's going to be them. And then Geeky comes out and puts up 2 goals. So statistically, that looked, I mean, not even statistically, they just melded very well together. And so that's kind of how that conversation happened. And I mean, we did go over some of the stats earlier, but I mean, you still have Giordano playing 21 minutes a night. That dude's ancient. but then again, you had Chara playing, 22 minutes, I think, in Washington last year.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, he is take like 2 strides to get from goal line to goal line, so it's not necessarily the best comparison.
Yeah.
But,
well, I was on the Geek Squad early as a new Seattle Kraken and a new hockey fan. I was like, oh man, they're already starting to get that trendy. But hearing that is a little like, okay, take pause. Still haven't picked that jersey yet. I know I'm not leaning towards geeky, thankfully, but it was starting to go up there in terms of what kind of jersey I was interested. I also wanted to know, of the Seattle Kraken players, if you were a Seattle Kraken fan, what jersey do you think you would get?
Yanni Gord. I like Yanni Gord. I'm a big Tampa fan as well.
I saw that coming.
He's underappreciated in Tampa. I think he's going to come in and potentially center that first line with Eberle. I think that's a good 1-2 punch on the first line. I think that's a good pair.
Yeah, that's one of those ones I'll be looking at as I go and check out the training complex tomorrow. I might have to pick one up, and that's it's tricky not having like that connection yet as a player and seeing him, but
yeah, knowing
he's coming from Tampa and just all the interviews I've seen with him, I already like the guy. It's that or maybe Tanev for me. I think that's
Tanev. Yeah. I know Tanev isn't a star, but I like Tanev. I like what he brings to the table. I like his personality. He's a cool guy.
Yep. Gotta love it.
I mean, seeing him for so long, being a Washington fan, and just his play style in Pittsburgh. I mean, I mentioned this before on the show, but I know I'm supposed to hate Pittsburgh as a Washington fan. I can't. I like the organization. I have really enjoyed watching the development, even going back to when Kovalev was the first of 1 out of 3 Russians to have his name on the cup, coming out of New York with Mike Keenan after that year, and playing with Alexei Morozov before he got hurt and everything back in '93. But yeah, I mean, Tanev's a great one. For me personally, I really am just waiting to see what Grubauer has, because I mean, he looked good last night, but that was the first time that he looked like a top tier goaltender.
Yeah, that first game was iffy.
That's a boomer bust couple of goalies. Though they could go either way. They could be a great tandem. It could be a scary tandem.
Yeah.
Yep. And I mean, speaking of goalies, because Seattle had Vitek Vanacek for all about 7 minutes. They did interview him down back in Washington, and they said, like, Seattle Kraken legend Vitek Vanacek, like, what was your experience with it? He's like, I didn't go. Like, I didn't even get a jersey. Like, I thought about having my car sent out there. They're asking if he looked at apartments or whatever, and he just said, I was in the Czech Republic. I didn't even go to Seattle. I don't know. But I mean, that being said, Ilya Samsonov, the other half of the goaltending pairing down in Washington, is hurt now. So Vitek's our starting goalie down there, and Canadians legend Zach Fucale.
The next Carey
that
Price
Andy and
to
I
you.
were just making fun of just making fun of the entirety of the time at the United Center, because I mean we're sitting there watching, but I'm also checking scores. Well, we were both checking scores, and that was I think Fucale let up 4
goals and 15 shots or something ridiculous.
It was just so bad. And just a brief background. He was supposed to be the next Carey Price.
Yeah, Montreal drafted him, and he was supposed to be who replaced Carey Price once Carey Price got too old, and he never cracked the AHL roster for Montreal. He's since in Hershey now, but he's not great.
He's in Washington now because Washington gave up what's his face, Phoenix Copley.
Oh, well, he also sucks.
I mean, he does, but he was the third string for them for.
Yeah.
I mean, he did look really good in the AHL. I mean, when it was him and was it Grubauer when
he's not a kid though, so like he is what he is.
No. Yeah, I mean, it's oh well, that's enough about Washington. Whatever.
Well, to bring it back real quickly, while we're still on like goalies and Grubauer, like if Grubauer or Drieger were to underperform, did either of you happen to catch enough out of Decord to think that maybe he could be someone that hangs on the roster as a third option and is going to be able to? Because I think I saw a 905 save percentage right behind Grubauer, which he brought up in those last couple games. And I at least was impressed by his play. And I know he's put out there kind of in scrap minutes, but ASU kid, at least I thought could play.
He was in the net for when Andy and I were leaving the United Center. Mm-hmm. And I mean, so naturally I didn't get to see him in action aside from just quickly glancing at the highlights ex post facto. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I wouldn't rule him out. You always need a third string goalie. God forbid, Groovy or Drieger get hurt. It's good to know that they have a backup. Yeah. I wouldn't expect to see him too much over the course of the regular season, if at all.
Yeah.
Barring any injuries, which again, God forbid, you never want to see anybody get hurt. But it's It'll be interesting to see what he does down in Charlotte, assuming that they're going to be starting him as a third string NHL goaltender, playing in the AHL.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
that's my perspective on that.
I think there's something to be excited about with him. He's young for a goalie. 25 is still very young.
Yeah.
I think he will get some starts this year. I think depending on if one of the other two goalies falter or gets hurt, he's a good guy to have as your third. In the NHL now, you need 3 goalies or you're not going to succeed.
Yep.
So I think he's a great option. I don't think you'll see him sticking with the roster too long, but there's something to be excited about with a young goalie with promise.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I know at least what I saw from our goalies, like it kind of just continued to incline. And towards the end there, I at least felt a lot more confident than I did in that first game. But moving on, outside the Kraken, I know we already talked, me and Jameson, a lot more than we'd probably like about vaccines. But I know Jameson is very passionate to talk about our next vaccination-related story. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, we gotta. Well, I missed this in the previous period or segment period.
Even better, we saved it for this very special third period.
Yeah, and I mean, so especially having Andy here because we agree on a lot, and he'll be able to kind of elaborate on a lot of the stuff that I maybe will choose not to put into words.
I'll choose to say it
for sake of a mature audiences only. But
go ahead though. Let them have it though. What's the news story? What's everybody really talking about right now?
So we've ripped on Evander Kane. I know I have about the whole domestic abuse thing. the whole potentially betting against his team, in which case just the competitive integrity of the game is just completely flawed. Granted, the NHL said, no, that didn't happen. Like, we can't justify that. I think it's a load of malarkey, because why would a private bookmaker release any information about a huge horse? But that's just speculation. I don't know. That being said, the new one is that both he and the San Jose Sharks, the team for which he plays, are being accused of him submitting a fake vaccination card. So that in and of itself against league policy. So the Sharks face a hefty fine if that's true. But that's a federal crime.
Yeah.
Punishable by up to 5 years. 5 years in federal prison.
Yikes.
So to me, and again, this is all pure allegation, but to me, I don't understand how you can be such an absolute piece of shit that the drama around the league, yes, I will drink to that after I finish this. The drama around the league is just somehow revolving around you. First, you gamble on team-related stuff. Nobody wants you in the locker room because you're a piece of shit. That's 2. Secondly, you beat your wife. You're a piece of shit. That's 3. 4, now you're committing federal crimes. You piece of shit. That's 5. I don't understand how this guy is just the center of attention with negative publicity repeatedly. How do you just find it inherently difficult as a human being to shut the fuck up? That's 6 and keep your nose clean?
Oh man,
it just drives me nuts.
He is also about to be responsible for his fucked up years. You're about to be for those 6 drinks, my friend.
Yeah,
I mean, you're talking about what he did in the last 3 months. Evander Kane has a history beyond the last 3 months.
That's what I'm saying.
Please,
that's what I'm saying.
Please elaborate, because every time I think Jameson gets too fumed up, too excited, it just becomes, I hear a rambling of many of these things that we should bleep out, but don't, because we're cracking one open. We don't give a shit at this point in the third period.
So he was, the domestic abuse is not the first time he's been accused of sexual harassment of a woman. I mean, this happened in 2016.
Was that out in Buffalo? Sorry to interject, but I believe that was out in Buffalo, where he was at some nightclub.
Yeah.
And there was 4 or 5 different women that said he groped them or was somehow physically intrusive. Which
he also, I mean, he's a mess. But he also, under the gambling, he would fly out on off nights to Vegas. He would Dennis Rodman it, except the San Jose Sharks sucked and he sucked. Although I think he was in Atlanta at the time. Also,
he's not a bad player though. That's the real killer. If he would just keep his dumb fucking mouth shut and play the game to the extent of his capabilities, and I don't know, not abuse women, God forbid. That's a that to me is the biggest thing. This should not even be a conversation. It would be one thing if he was a gambling addict and just couldn't figure it out, and the only thing that he did wrong was make some bad monetary decisions. Maybe I would feel less strongly about this. But the fact that this is just repeated sexual assault, especially, I mean, not to minimize what it means to do it in a nightclub, but against your pregnant wife, come on.
And that wasn't, I mean, he was physically and sexually abusive to her.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. If it's not the textbook definition of morally reprehensible bullshit, I don't know what is.
I mean, it takes something special to get Dustin Byfuglien to hate you.
Oh yeah.
So Byfuglien is basically just a party animal, good time, loves everyone kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
He took Evander Kane's equipment and dress clothes and just threw it in the shower.
Jesus.
Like
Just
he hated him.
hazed him.
Damn.
And again, if he's found guilty, not only are the Sharks in a lot of hot water, not only because again, he's a good hockey player. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not going to lump him in. I did mention how much you didn't agree with some of my views on Tom Wilson, but just to kind of collapse the idea, he's a good hockey player. If he would just stop being a jackass, there would be no problems.
Even although he hasn't been good in a while, but I think a lot of it has to do with him just being an absolute piece of trash.
He had a decent season last year. Didn't he put up like 40 some odd points?
I mean, for what they're paying him, is that really good?
I mean, not really, but it's also San Jose. So, I mean, you take what you can
and it's pro sports. I think all across pro sports, we've seen people are willing to pay astronomical amounts for mediocrity at certain markets. And I think, if you can just produce at an average level, there's people that will pay for it in professional sports right now.
Yeah, San Jose gave up a first, a fourth, and a prospect to get Evander Kane onto the team. Jesus. And then they're paying him like $7.5 million, and he has not produced over 55 points.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he had 49 and 56. Did I just quickly see that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a bad amount. It's just for $7 million, you $7.5 million. You expect, I don't know, a guy to not commit federal crimes.
You would think.
I mean, I don't know. That's why I just default to the idea of just saying most of his public life has been morally reprehensible, and that's a hill I will die on. I don't care if people disagree. Maybe you're a diehard Sharks fan and it's just like, he's not that bad, but no, he's the piece of shit. 7.
I find it hard to argue against domestic abuse. If somebody's willing to die on that hill, they're also morally reprehensible.
Well, damn. We are right at the end of I think good 20 minutes there. And I think if there's a message, if there's a message I would like to end on drinking on, I'd like it to be that. So fuck domestic abuse, fuck being an asshole, just fuck Evander Kane. I'll drink to that. Thank you for coming on, Andy, and thanks for cracking one open with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate you, Andy. Thank you. Cheers, mate.
And that's a great first guest to have. We've talked about Andy a couple times, at least from your personal experience. I've got a couple guests I hope I can get on. And again, we want your feedback still. This isn't shutting anyone out on Twitter and our YouTube comments. We are still going to feature you guys primarily in our third period. We just didn't have a lot this week, and we had a lot to talk about, obviously, there with Andy. So, hey, cheers to Andy, and I'm going to crack one open just for him being our special first guest. Thanks, mate.
Thank you, Andy. Cheers.
Yeah, and I think, gives us a little more perspective. Loved you guys going off, educating me a little bit more, and just the camaraderie you guys obviously have on and off the ice is it translates clearly to our podcast right here.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I wanted Andy specifically, because as he mentioned, he does a couple other podcasts. Check out bracket. Oh Jesus. Well, those 6 drinks are killing me now.
We will include it down in the in the description of this episode on YouTube, and then we'll definitely tweet that out on Twitter and on our accounts. So we'll make up for that in the post game.
I'm gonna have to drink for being a absolute slag.
Hey man, you absolutely do, and between that and Kane, I think we're a little worried about the the toll this 9th episode might take on you, my friend. So just take it easy. And for all of you drinking at home, just make sure you're responsible. Make sure if you have had a couple, you're going to take it easy tonight watching this podcast. And if you're drinking along with us, more power to you. But man,
drink some water.
You definitely need to drink some water, and you need to know when cracking one open isn't going to lead to a more positive night. And I think that's why we are here in our sudden death wrap up, realizing that you can crack a few too many open, particularly when you have a guest and a lot of vaccine related complaints in your episode. But hey, what I loved most about this 9th episode is we cut it loose a little bit. We got back into our vibe, especially, having so many weeks off. Last episode was a little bit, we had a lot of hockey to talk about, and we just didn't have as much of that personality, I think, leaked through in our first couple episodes, which, thanks to some sky cracking, for me at least, helped me get through it. And I hope at least all our fans appreciate it. And I hope all of you out there share this podcast with your fellow Seattle Kraken fans. As we go into next week, we actually open up the season and we have real regular season hockey to talk about. We play Vegas less than a week from now, and we will be able to come at you with a podcast next weekend that is going to actually be talking about the Kraken's first legitimate regular season game. I can't tell you how awesome the preseason has already been and how hyped I am going into this. Jameson, what have you taken away from this episode, and what are you most hyped for in the next week before we record again?
To me, I think it's a huge step bringing Andy on. He has a lot to talk about, and I think he's a fantastic first guest to have. Gonna have to forgive me for a little bit of the cursing, but yeah. What I'm looking forward to next week, as you already mentioned, first actual season game. I am very interested to see who's going to make opening night roster, and not only who's on the list, but who, how they allocate the lines.
Yeah.
We mentioned earlier how Giordano's already playing an average of 21 minutes a night.
Yep.
That's a lot. Already talked about how Geeky is kind of, I don't want to say not pulling his weight because he has the 4 points, but
Andy might be right.
He is very right in the sense that when you have 4 points in 5 games and you're -5, that's where plus minus is a actual realistic metric by which to gauge the value of a player. So I'm curious as to see where he lands. Again, as he mentioned, Yanni Gord. We'll see. It is going to be a really tough game. I don't know a way to sugarcoat that at all, because it is Vegas. They took a shit on it. God. All right.
Well, see, here's the thing. My metric for how well our episodes are is actually based on how many curse words we got in. And I think we're performing it at a top mark today.
Way over standard for sure.
We've got at least 40 shots on goal, buddy.
Yeah.
So about that tough matchup, next week's guest, if we can pull him, will be at that arena in Las Vegas to catch the very first ever Seattle Kraken game. That's already got me pumped up, but we still will have room to entertain your tweets, your comments down in YouTube. And we hope that if you aren't already subscribed and liking the podcast, that you get to it. And if you are already, you share it with your friends and fellow Seattle Kraken fans, or just NHL hockey fans, because I think we have a fantastic thing going. And episode 10 is when we are finally getting to not only double-digit episodes, but really talking regular season hockey. And it'll get a lot more interesting from this point on, especially because, we'll always be cracking one open, baby. Cheers, mate. Great episode.
Cheers.
Let's go regular season.
Absolutely. And cheers, Andy. Isn't it?
Thank you, Andy.